Hi, everybody. Today we are going to do the last part of Joseph and Aseneth, the long version. It's actually technically like two separate little books, and I just did book one. The second part gets into all different down a whole nother track, and I'm only doing the research on the first part, so I'm just going to be reading the first part. So if you remember, the last time we saw Aseneth, she was talking to an angel. And the angel had just given her a honeycomb, and the honeycomb is a symbol for almost like angelic food, like food that the angels would eat, almost like when you think about the Greek gods, how they eat nectar and ambrosia. It's kind of that idea. Okay, chapter 17. The man said to Aseneth, "Have you observed this?" And she said, "Yes, my lord, I have observed it all." And the man said, "So shall be the words I have spoken to you." The man touched the comb, and fire went up from the table and burnt up the comb. And as it burned, the comb gave out a refreshing fragrance that filled the room. That's the honeycomb. And Aseneth said to the man, "There are, my lord, 7 virgins with me who have been brought up with me and who wait upon me. They were born in the same night as I was, and I love them. Let me call them so that you can bless them as you've blessed me." The man said, "Call them," and she called them, and the man blessed them and said, "God the Most High will bless you forever." The man said to Aseneth, "Take this table away." And Aseneth turned to move the table, but the man had vanished out of her sight. She saw what looked like a chariot of fire being taken up into the heaven towards the east. Remind you of Daniel. And Aseneth said, "Be merciful, O Lord, to thy maidservant, because it was in ignorance that I spoke evil before thee." And while this was happening, behold, a young man, one of Joseph's servants, came and said, "Lo, Joseph, the mighty man of God, is coming to you today." Aseneth called her steward and said, "Get ready a special dinner for me, because Joseph, the mighty man of God, is coming to us." Aseneth went into her room and opened her wardrobe, and she took out her finest robe that shone like lightning, and she put it on. She tied a resplendent royal girdle around her waist, and this girdle was of precious stones. She put on golden bracelets around her hands, and golden boots on her feet, and a costly necklace around her neck. She put on a golden crown above her head, and in the crown in front were the costliest of stones. She covered her head with a veil, and she said to her maidservant, "Bring me pure water from the spring." Aseneth bent down to the water in the basin, and her face shone like the sun, and her eyes like the rising morning star. A little slave came and said to Aseneth, "Lo, Joseph is at the gates of our court." Aseneth went down to the 7 virgins to meet him. And when Joseph saw her, he said to her, "Come to me, pure virgin, for I have had good news about you from heaven, explaining everything about you." Joseph stretched his hands out and embraced Aseneth, and Aseneth embraced Joseph, and they greeted each other for a long time while receiving new life in their spirit. Aseneth said to him, "Come, my lord, into my house." And she took his hand and brought him inside her house. Joseph sat down on her father Potiphera's seat, and she brought water to wash his feet. And Joseph said to her, "Let one of your virgins come. Let her wash my feet." Aseneth said to him, "No, my lord, for my hands are your hands, and your feet are my feet, and no one else shall wash your feet." And so she had her way and washed his feet. Joseph took her by the right hand and kissed it, and she kissed his head. Aseneth's parents came back from their country estate, and they saw Aseneth sitting with Joseph wearing a wedding robe, and they rejoiced and glorified God. They ate and drank. Potiphera said to Joseph, "Tomorrow I will invite the lords and satraps of Egypt, and I will celebrate your wedding, and you will take Aseneth as your wife." Joseph said, "First I must tell Pharaoh about Aseneth, because he is my father, and he will give me her as my wife himself." Joseph stayed that day with Potiphera, and he did not sleep with Aseneth, for he said, "It's not right for a man who worships God to have intercourse with his wife before their marriage." When Joseph entered the garden, she bowed herself before him and washed the dust from his feet, telling him the words which the angel had spoken concerning her. Joseph got up early in the morning, and he sent away to Pharaoh and told him about Aseneth. Pharaoh sent and called Potiphera and Aseneth. Pharaoh was astonished at her beauty and said, "The Lord will bless you, even the God of Joseph, who has chosen you to be his bride. For he is the firstborn son of God, and you will be called the daughter of the Most High, and Joseph will be your bridegroom forever." Pharaoh took golden crowns and put them on their heads and said, "God Most High will bless you and prosper your family forever." Pharaoh turned them towards each other, and they kissed each other. He celebrated their wedding with a banquet and much merrymaking for 7 days. He invited all the chief men in the land of Egypt. he issued a proclamation saying, "Any man who does any work during the 7 days of Joseph and Aseneth's wedding shall die." When the wedding was over and the banquet ended, Joseph had intercourse with Aseneth, and Aseneth conceived by Joseph and bore Massena and his brother Ephraim in Joseph's house. Okay, that's the end of the larger part of, that's part one. And then there is part two, which takes place after it, once the 7 years of famine starts. But I'm just going to leave it at that. I have loved researching this story. I still have another full week of research and things I need to do with this story. But what I'm really drawing on is, oh yeah, there's a sick girl in the other room. If you hear somebody coughing, there's what I loved so much about this story is the richness of the language. I think after many years of a hangover from all the asceticism, I'm not saying that that's not important, and discipline and spiritual discipline is not important, but I think there is so much room for enjoying creation, enjoying the beauty of creation, and enjoying our human lives inside that creation. That includes human romantic love, but also sanctified human love. And I think the story has such a huge part to play in kind of building out an understanding of ancient spiritual life that isn't rooted in the desert mothers and fathers, where they're just constantly being restricted and, seeing how far they can take it. This is the other end of the spectrum, where you find these two blessed by God, but there isn't so much severity around their story. There's a lot of beautiful language. And obviously they both have their spiritual practices, and those are things that are important to them, but they grow and change and move. And you also see, the Holy Spirit present, and angels coming and sending different information, and they pivot based on that. And so it's not just based on how far you can remove yourself from the world and created order. And this is all about entering into the created order so deeply that you meet God in that capacity. And I think we have so much room for that right now. I think people are hungry for a spiritual life that is really embodied and really rich. So I've been given Joseph and Aseneth as a spiritual gift from one of my professors, and so I'm giving it back out. So that was the last day with that, and we'll be back to the Psalms tomorrow. Bye.